Hey guys, welcome back. Now we're going to be talking about sculpting and how it differs from polygon modeling. And I think we should best define these two workflows and enable you to basically choose the best option when it comes to approaching your current project. In general, now that's not exclusive, they're not mutually exclusive. It's best to know how to use both of them. But in general, what we've been doing so far was polygon modeling. So let's go and create a cube. And as you can see, this is basically a block, right? There's 6 faces on this cube. So essentially, once you start dragging vertices around, you'll be doing exactly what we've been doing so far, and that is called polygon modeling. The reason for that is that people basically started making characters in this way before sculpting was ever, it never existed beforehand. So let's say we open our channel box here and we go and say that this is a 4x4x4, right? So currently we have 4 subdivisions on each side, and this would enable us to start making, let's say, a torso, right? So if we were to be making a humanoid in our case, we'd be making a torso. So we'd go into our vertex mode. Well, first of all, we'd probably enable symmetry. Oops. I forgot to press the control here. We'll enable our symmetry, so that's the object X, and we're going to start working on it. In general, it's very hard to actually get this thing working right when it comes to perspective. So you'll probably be going into your front view first, right? Grab your vertices, move them to the left maybe a little bit here, so that it starts resembling a torso. Maybe move these a little bit further down like this, yeah, and then you can grab these at the center, move them a little bit inside to the inside, and these a little bit more. So already, as you can see, this is starting to resemble some kind of torso, right? You can go into edge modes. Obviously, you can slide them down, obviously with the constraints. So we go and go to edge slide. We'll slide them downwards like this, or maybe give it a little bit more of a jolt here, right? And then once you're done with that, you go back to your perspective mode, and as you can see, well, for some reason I started working from the top, so we'd have to rotate this. But you can imagine what the story is. In this case, after you're done with that, you're going to go here, which would be from the side, I believe. Yeah, though this is not the right side, so I'd have to change the object, and we'd be working from, we basically will try to get this thing closer together. So we'd perhaps get this edge loop here, sorry, these edges here, and just scale them down, right? Something like this. Probably add another edge loop here at the top, yeah, and we'd probably just scale this whole thing further down towards itself. So it would be something of the sort like this, yeah, and you'll be getting something that's resembling a torso, right? So you just keep working at it until you get what you need. Now, the thing about this is that notice that currently the plus side on this is that I have a very good edge flow. Obviously, this is not nearly complete, so there's plenty of options, plenty of opportunities to mess it up. But the cool thing about it is, let me just turn off the symmetry here. The cool thing about this is that once you have a good enough edge flow, you can actually select loops just by double-clicking on an edge. So it'll allow you to work very easily and make your mesh very well defined in terms of animation and very evenly spaced when it comes to manipulating the mesh. Okay, so it's very easy to work on this. The problem is that it's also very easy to screw it up. Once you have your mesh, once you break your edge loops, you're gonna run into problems, because once you go into the crotch area and where it has to, you have to break the loop so that it goes into this triangle type deal. And then you gotta attach the like the arms here, right? And once you're done with the pelvis, you're gonna have to attach the legs as well. Not to mention the neck area, because the head has more polygons than the rest of the body. So you need to somehow get the edges connected. So for every one edge from your torso, you'd have 2 edges on your head, for example, or anything like that. And the face itself is also very difficult to actually get right topology when it comes to the face. So it's pretty intensive in experience. You have to have done this for quite a long time, and that's why a lot of people still prefer using this method, because they're used to it. And to be fair, it gives you quite a little bit more control about your overall result. The problem with this as well is, at the end of the day, you need a more high resolution version of your model. So you're going to have to keep adding edge loops and just subdivide at the end. So you probably get something like this, right? Once you subdivide it. And as you can see, it's not the exact same thing. So once you get that, let me just go into settings here to show you what exactly I mean. Let's go into preferences and go into polygons here. Maybe increase our edge width by 0.5 and go to the soft hard or hard colored, right? No, just soft hard like this. So in our case, currently you don't see anything, but in general, what you're going to be doing, you're going to be adding soft and hard edges to harden the place. So maybe you'd get this edge and you'd get this edge here, right? And you would harden it. So you harden them. In this case, see, it's not very visible for some reason. But if I create a cube, well, not a cube, but let's say a cylinder, as you can see, we have our soft and hard edges. Soft edges being the dotted lines here. Let me just go and change this a little bit again. Maybe it would be better if we just make them colored. For some reason this does not update, so I'm gonna have to create a new object again. As you can see, there we go. So your green edges would be your soft edges, and these blue edges here would be your hard edges. And once you subdivide it, it's, these hard edges maintain a little bit of that detail. Obviously, you probably need something a little bit more drastic in our case. So if we go into edge mode again and we select these edges on each side, right? In our case, we would crease them. There's the crease tool, and you get something like an absolute relative. But in general, you'd be using just your mouse button to crease them. And as the more you crease them, the more they basically maintain their initial shape. So if these were something like like shoulder pads, you'd probably crease those, and you'd get a little bit better result on your torso. And you have to do that all around the all around the current object. As you can see, the more I crease them, the more they look as the initial object. As you can see here, this is our initial object and this is our smooth object, and as you can see, there's quite a difference between the two. One is creased and one is just a hardened edge. Now obviously you can harden these as well a little bit more aggressively. In our case, we can increase the angle, for example, to 180, but for some reason it doesn't really work for me. Like, I never really see a good enough result for hardening. I really don't know what exactly it is. As far as I know, it's used just to cut off the subdivision or maybe the light calculation. But in general, you'd be better off using the creases, to achieve this effect here, right? But anyway, enough of this stuff. Let's go into sculpting. The sculpting is it has its own drawbacks, all right? There's an inherent problem with sculpting that in order to do that, you need a lot of polygons. So if I were to create a polysphere, this is not nearly enough polygons. Okay, I'm still in crease mode. There's not nearly enough polygons here to actually begin our sculpting process. So we might have to use a lot more. So we go into the channel box, and when it comes to subdivisions, we probably just pump it up all the way to 50 in our case, although you may need more, right? Because this is, even that probably is not enough. So we would rotate this, we'll rotate this for not by 90 degrees across the x-axis. Sorry, the x-axis, yes. 90 degrees across the x, and now we have something that would resemble a head once we're done with it. So we'd go into our tools, mesh tools, and we go into the sculpting tools and grab one of these. Sculpt tool in our case is what we need. And as you can see, our cursor immediately changes, and everything really changes right now. And the cursor is huge. Okay, so there's one thing when it comes to brush usage. If you hold down B, the B key, and you press the left mouse button, this will give you this ability to basically resize your tool, your brush, to whatever you want. So in our case, maybe leave it at something like that. And when you press your M key, this is going to adjust your magnitude. So as you can see, the bigger the magnitude, the more of a drastic effect you're going to have on your mesh. Okay, it's a good idea to have your tool settings as well on this side, because you can basically add some how should I say it, more definitive numbers to your workflow. But the important thing is you need to get to add a steady stroke here, because this will allow you to, not have some drastic changes. So if we drag something off, we could actually maybe define the symmetry as well. By the way, with the left mouse button, notice that it changes once you press and hold shift, because it allows you to freeze, bulge, grab. All these things are usually available from Control 1, 2, and 3, or you could just tear off the Sculpting Tools menu and have it on the side so that these things are available to you. But in general, you'd probably be better off just using the shift and right mouse button and have all of these available to you immediately on demand. Holding Control is not going to change anything. Control and Shift are the same, but Control Shift and right mouse button is going to do exactly the same as the right mouse button. Okay, so what you really need is just the shift modifier for the right mouse button to get all your separate settings, and then obviously you need the right mouse button to get your other settings. In our case, we're going to go into Symmetry, and we're going to go into, I don't know, Object X. As you can see, we're currently working on both sides of the object. So if we were to define maybe the eyes, so we would go and start bulging the eyes out. Well, no, this is not good. With Control, actually, in our case, we need to bulge them in, right? So as you can see, we're bulging our eyes, and really, this is quite unintuitive at first, but once you get it, as you can see, this is not actually very. This isn't very high detail. As you can see, there's still some problems with our geometry here, not to mention that it's a little bit too hard. Now, obviously, you can set up all of this stuff here, like your fall off, like between these different settings here, and immediately, if you hold Shift, this should allow you to smooth your last operation. So you got your eyelids here, right? And you need a nose in our case, so we'd have to grab a nose, maybe pull it out a little bit, right? There's some kind of nose here. We could pull it out even more. But that's not enough polygons, right? So we need to actually exit our sculpting, go into our channel box, and actually increase the subdivisions. So we'd probably go to 100 by 100. The problem is that we've already modified this mesh, so we'd have to delete an input, which I'm not entirely sure how that happened. I think you could just disable it. No. Okay, well, let's just Control Z everything to death. Right, there's our original object, and we go back into our channel box, which is behind here, and we're going to go and set this up to 100 by 100. Right, now it's a little bit better to work with, but I don't think it's still enough. So I'd say probably 300 by 300 would be best. Now we can work with our, now we can sculpt it, because it has to behave like clay, right? In our case, we're going to go into our Sculpt tool, and since the symmetry is still on, we can begin working again on our object. As you can see, we're just going to lower the size of this and maybe the magnitude, because the magnitude is a little bit too high, right? By the way, you can remove the steady stroke and you get an instant result. Problem is that, it's not as defined, right? The steady stroke allows you to have these nice smooth lines, whereas without the steady stroke, you'd be getting something like this. You can see I got errors here on my you see, it's not very smooth at all. Once you have the steady stroke, it allows you to have smooth transition lines. Thing is, it's a little bit delayed, so you need to decide what's your distance. So if you had a really high sensitivity or a really big object, you'd really have to move before it starts moving on its own, right? So you probably set it up to something like 2, and this will allow you to have a little bit of delay and get the results that you need, maybe even 1, right? So this is like your dampening, like your lag effect, but it allows allows Maya to basically calculate your desired size, as in desired movement, before it actually begins. So I'm going to leave it at 2, for example, and I'm going to disable it. Well, I'm not going to disable it, but let's say you could reduce the buildup in our case, for example, so that it's not as brutal. But if you hold Control, you'll always do the reverse of what the tool does. So in our case, once I press the left mouse button, as you can see, I'm doing some modifications here, and it's going, I'm basically getting them upwards. Okay, I'm bulging things out. So this would be something like some kind of goggles or something. If I press and hold Control, this will enable me, in our case, to maybe create the eye sockets. But as you can see, I need to actually move my mouse quite a little bit more. So there's my eye sockets, for example, right? I can actually make them maybe bigger, smaller. It's always a good idea when you're working on something like that is to go slow, all right? Is to go slow, because most of the time you'd be getting, you might get undesired results. And once you're done, always use Shift. And Shift is it's a good practice anyway. It basically relaxes your, previous, it's like smoothing your previous operation. So as you can see, my eyelids are a lot smoother at this stage of the game, at this stage of the modeling, right? So let's say these are my eyelids, and my eyelids are done, but I need a nose, right? Now, in order to create a nose, I'm still going to keep the symmetry on, because it's very hard to get the exact center. But once you get to work here with the nose, you might actually get something agreeable when it comes to your modeling. Unfortunately, this is nearly not big enough or strong enough, so we need to maybe increase the brush size a little bit and get our magnitude up a little bit as well. Maybe reduce the brush size after all at the end of the day. So what you need to do is grab it, right? And there's our nose. Now, obviously, this is not nice at all, so you could maybe Control and Shift and pull this backwards a little bit. Wow, this is really taking a long time to calculate. Oops. Smooth it out. Like, this is some kind of I mean, it looks like shit, obviously, so it would take some time to, you have to play around with this, in order to get it right. But by the way, you should also notice that there's other. See, currently we don't have enough polygons already in our nose. We need more polygons for this to work. Also, we need to reduce our brush intensity, brush magnitude, because this is quite brutal. All right, and the Control does the opposite thing. I believe Control and Shift actually smooths automatically. I'm not sure what it does, but it takes a long time to calculate. So I'm not sure what the story is there. Yeah, I think it pushes it back in some weird way. But as you can see, we got loads of other tools. Like the Smooth tool does exactly what we just did. It just smooths your selection here. Obviously, you can select, still modify it. And the Shift thing does exactly the same. It just relaxes everything around you, whereas the Control thing does the opposite. You can spray, foam, flatten. All these things give you basically an opportunity. This is a toolkit that allows you to... whoa. I sprayed too much foam. Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry. I haven't actually used a lot of these. I use basically the Sculpt tool most of the time. But you got the knife tool, the fill tool. All these will be nice. Like the bulge will probably be better used for... Oh, Jesus Christ. What the hell? Why is this so huge? The magnitude is big. Too big. Right, so we need to reduce the magnitude. Is just absolutely huge on this thing. Can't even find the sucker. I don't think you can even change the magnitude on that. Oh, that's massive. The smear tool allows you to obviously smear stuff around. Jesus, why is my magnitude so huge? I don't understand. All right, apparently my options are very little when it comes to that. So maybe these are not made. This is a too small of an object. Remember, this is just centimeter by centimeter. Maybe that's the case. I'm not entirely sure. Jesus Christ. Just play around with these tools. And the freeze tool, by the way, is very efficient, very effective, because you can actually freeze things that you don't want to work on. In our case, let's say we're happy with our eyes, so we don't want to actually change our eyelids or anything of that matter. So what we're going to do, we're going to freeze them, and now whenever I decide to do something weird, like, I don't know, I don't really know, like just sculpt, regular sculpt. And if I want to define the cheekbones of our little hero here, assuming it gets me. Come on. Get a little bit of a bigger brush. Let's say I want to define the cheekbones this way. So I'm defining it, but as you can see, even if I'm working over these, I will not actually disturb the initial geometry here. So this is nice when you're working on something and you need to actually, get your like I said, get your basically your final shape. You don't want to screw it up. And then once you're done, you can go back to the freeze tool. I believe there was a way to go into the freeze tool with a shortcut. I just don't remember it right now. Press Shift and it will unfreeze everything, right? And you can remove all your freezings. You can continue with your work. With the control doing exactly the same is the opposite, but the Shift is just smoothing it out. All right, the control removes it more sharply. Shift removes it slower, so it gives you like a little bit of fall off. You can obviously unfreeze all if you want, right? And you can invert the frozen. So let's say you only want to work on the eyelids, so you get something like this, right? And then you invert the frostiness, and now you can work only on your eyelids, for example, and you'll be able to add more detail that way. Also, a bunch of other stuff like stamps and displays. The stamp is basically if you got some image, an alpha map, generally you want to stamp it onto your object, but this is usually done on your high resolution, sorry, not on high resolution, but once you're done with your basic geometry, that's when you want to be adding these details as stamps, right? Stylus, I don't even know what that is. Oh, it's minimum, maximum brush strength, whatever. You don't really need that. The fall off is nice because it basically tells you what's the fall off between your, let me just unfreeze all. What's the fall off between your tools? So in our case, maybe right now we'd be having a fall off, you know, a regular fall off like this. As you can see, the eyebrow effect. You can see that it's not exactly static. If we had it as a straight line, I don't think they have a straight line, but let's go like this, for example. The exact same operation has a very different result, right? It's a lot sharper because it starts very high and then it falls off a lot easier. Or you could have a very, very, very casual buildup, right? Like currently, as you can see, this is the exact same brush, but I'm doing different things to it, right? With different strokes. Obviously, you can modify these if you want. You can just go nuts and have something like that. And this is going to give you a very high, like there's basically no fall off at all. In this case, it's just a very crude instant result. So like this is very unadvised. I wouldn't advise doing that. But you can reset the curve back to original position. You can have custom curves. So right, these tools have a lot of flexibility when it comes to controls. But anyway, enough of this sculpting stuff. There's one other problem, and we're going to talk about this in the next video, is that currently we have a lot of polygons. Like if we take a look here at the top, let me just exit this. If we go here at the top, you will notice that we have a ton of polygons. You got what? 90,000 polygons just for this head. And let's say I did everything I needed to do, and this is my final result. I know this looks creepy as hell because it doesn't have a mouth. I don't know. Let's go put a mouth in it. By the way, the last tool enabled, you can re-enable it by pressing Y, and this will enable your last tool. Pressing G will actually give you your last operation, whereas Y will enable, give you a last tool. But anyway, let's say in our case we want to add a mouth, so I need to actually create the mouth. Why am I? This is so weird. Maybe I shouldn't have used the symmetry on this thing. Maybe I should have just turned it off. But like I said, this is just a screw around. You don't need the symmetry for this. Once you're done, you can always relax your entire selection here to get it a little bit more of a. Obviously, reduce the brush size, for example. Re-enable the symmetry, right? And maybe get your mouth a little bit. This is too big, a little bit too of a smile here. All right, so there's a happy face. I believe that's a happy face, and I forgot to enable the symmetry in my case, so that's annoying. But let's say this is the Joker, right? We've created some weird face, and this is our final model. But there is a problem with our current situation. Is like I said, we got too many polygons. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the Quad Draw tool, and the Quad Draw tool is extremely efficient at getting rid of all these polygons, making it look very similar. So it's also called retopologizing. So we'll be basically we'll be retopologizing our current model so that it looks the same, but drastically reduced poly count. Right. So on that happy note, I'll see you guys next time.